Hi, welcome to Victoria Knits. I'm Victoria. You can find me on Instagram as Victoria Jean W and on Ravelry as Victoria Jean. I also have a Ravelry group called Victoria Knits. And since the last time I podcast, I have finished these Dumbledore's Christmas stocking socks. These will be for my grandson Perry. He just turned a year old. And if you're wondering why I would make adult-sized socks for a 1-year-old, you can check out episode 5 where I explain all about that. This is a free pattern on Ravelry. I liked it. I think it might have looked better if my yarn wasn't so busy. Another thing I did on these, I didn't follow my notes. I made handwritten notes because there's like a part A and a part B on the pattern, and I didn't follow them, so these socks don't match. But I don't think Perry's going to care a whole lot. I hope he doesn't. I hope he just appreciates socks that he got from his grandma. Another thing I got finished since the last podcast was these Inline for Pumpkin Spice Latte socks. This is a lovely pattern. This is a gift from Sarah at Saltbox Knits. I won this on her podcast. Hi, Sarah. It's a great pattern. I highly recommend it. You don't want to, do you see something? Look at that. These don't match either. I wrote down notes on these too. I didn't follow them. I have no idea what I was thinking. I don't know. It's been a strange few weeks of knitting for me, I guess. But anyway, I still like these socks. They'll be for me. The yarn is from Cappy at the Yarn and I Etsy shop. It's called Janis Joplin's Car, and I love it. I love these socks. I think they're gorgeous. And the pattern is so pretty. Look at that. Look at that little cable, and then that cable on the other side. So pretty. I highly recommend it. I'm starting this podcast outside today, and it's chilly. It's like 33 degrees out. We had a couple inches of snow last night, but I won't be out here very long. Another thing I did in the last couple of weeks was I had another video chat with Wendy from the Baba Yaya podcast and Linda from the Joey's Scarf podcast, and we have put together a make-along. It'll start January 15th. It's called the Knitflix Mal. And it is all about knitting something that represents a TV show or a movie. You can find threads for the make-along in our Ravelry groups, and there's a bundle of patterns in there to give you ideas. Hopefully you'll share some ideas or what you might knit. The make-along will go for 2 months and end on March 15th, and we will give out prizes from all 3 podcasts. So I hope we have some participation in that. I think it should be fun. And starting on January 15th, it will give everyone a little bit of a breather after the holidays. And Kim and I went hunting this week. Our annual hunt for our Christmas tree. So if you've watched my podcast before, you realize that I like to insert some extra info, usually history. There's lots of things you can research about Christmas. Good grief, the list is kind of endless. But I thought I would go with Santa Claus. And it's pretty easy to trace Santa back to at least 1626. That's pretty simple. He came with a ship of settlers from the Netherlands. They reached North America and they founded the Dutch colony New Amsterdam. The figurehead on their ship was St. Nicholas, the patron saint of sailors. These Dutch colonists brought their winter holiday customs with them, which involved St. Nicholas, known as Sinterklaas to them. 38 years later, that colony became New York, and 150 years later, those Dutch were but a memory. But when the short story writer Washington Irving mentioned the old Dutch Santa Claus legend in his Knickerbocker History of New York, it inspired Clement C. Moore to write a poem with fictional reindeer replacing the traditional white horse, in which he reintroduced Santa Claus and described him as an elf. Moore's first illustrator, Boyd, ignored the elf part and drew a strange little Dutchman smoking a stubby pipe. 40 years later, this poem was illustrated for Harper's Magazine by the famous cartoonist Thomas Nast. And not having the vaguest idea of what Moore's elf was supposed to look like, Nast drew Santa Claus as the winter holiday figure he remembered from the mountain villages in the Alps. A rather scary-looking gnome dressed in animal skins and carrying a short broom-like rod which wished to threaten children. Over the years, Nast's Santa became friendlier looking until in 1931, the Coca-Cola company decided they wanted to try to sell Coca-Cola to children. At the time, the law didn't allow them to because it was said that they had cocaine in their Coca-Cola formula, which I think they actually did. But they changed that so they could sell it to children, and the artist Haddon Sundblom was assigned to come up with a new, more commercial Santa, and there came the large, jolly fellow in the red and white colors of Coca-Cola. Also, some knitting I did from past episodes. In episode 12, I made the nibbling cardigan for my granddaughter Hayden, and her parents were sweet enough to send me pictures of her modeling it. As you can tell, she's quite the little character. They said it fit perfectly. I think it's a sweet looking little sweater. Also in the last episode, before this one, I showed that I made 3 of Wendy Prager's big red dog earflap hats, and my son and daughter-in-law also sent pictures of Hayden and her little brother Perry wearing theirs. Russell came for Thanksgiving this year, and so I was able to give him his, and he modeled it for me. They all fit very nicely, and you can tell they look really sweet in their little hats. I also made Russell a Barley Hat this year to match his flax sweater that I made for him. I had leftover yarn, which was Welcome to the Jungle by Lolo Did It. The Barley Hat is also by Tincanknits. It's a free pattern, and it turned out really well. And continuing with hats, I made 2 more hats recently. The pattern was Ready Steady. It's a free pattern on Ravelry. I made them in super bulky yarn. I made one for my daughter and one for someone else. And I also used my new pom-pom maker. Thanks to Patty at 4 Boys and an NL Girl. I saw that she went out and bought herself a pom-pom maker, and I thought, hey, that's a great idea. I'm kind of tired of using the little cardboard circles with the hole in the middle. Everybody's probably familiar with that they've made pom-pom makers with. So I thought that was really handy. This little Mr. and Mrs. Santa music box was a gift to Kim from his parents about 30 years ago. Hi, I'm outside again, but not for too long. Although it's even colder now. It's 1 p.m. and it is 25 degrees out, so it's chilly outside. And I am standing in front of an old structure on our property that was here when we bought this place. We refer to it as the manger, no particular reason. It looks like maybe it housed some goats at one time or something like that. I don't know. But I did want to show what I've been working on, or something else I've been working on lately. I've been working on some cowls. The first cowl I wanted to show you is the Fast Fade Cowl by Molly Klein Designs. I talked about it on my last podcast and said I had planned on trying it out. I hadn't done any of the fade things before, but I thought I would try this, so I did. This is the result. This was a very easy knit. There was some ribbing on each end, but mostly it was stockinette stitch. I liked it. I think it turned out really nice. I have to confess, I did add about 8 stitches to it. I thought I was being smart. I don't know why I did that. But I still think it turned out really nice, and I like it quite a bit. Another cowl I finished recently was the Land of Sweets cowl by Helen Stewart. I saw this cowl knit by Linda on the Joey's Scarf podcast, and right away I decided I needed to have that pattern. The pattern isn't sold separately yet. I'm sure it will be eventually, so I had to buy the group of patterns. I think it was like around $10, but it came with quite a few other patterns, so I figured it'd be worth it. I also saw Robin of the Cherry Purls podcast. She made this cowl. She did it in a slightly shorter version. I did the full length of the cowl. It's got some pretty patterns in it. Some little bit of lace sections. And here it is on. I like it. I like it quite a bit. I like the colors I used because you know me, I like crazy. I like all kinds of crazy colors. And so I used a different color. It takes 24 different colors if you do the complete cowl, which is what I did. It's very comfy. It feels good, especially today. It's pretty chilly out here. But I liked it quite a bit. I think you could modify either of these cowls very easily. The Molly Klein cowl, the Fast Fade cowl by Molly Klein Design, it's just a $2 pattern. I don't know what this one will eventually be. I think it would be worth it to purchase this one also. I like it quite a bit. But you could easily modify both of these cowls. And I'm going to put my jacket back on because it is chilly out here. It's downright cold. Another cowl I finished recently was this BFF cowl. This is for the Pen Pal knit along put on by Jenny at Lucky Jenny Knits, and hi Jenny, and Candy at Paws for Stitches. I knit this for my pen pal Patty. Hi Patty. She has the 4 Boys and an NL Girl podcast, which I highly recommend you check out. She does all kinds of stuff. So this was my half of the cowl. I also knit one just like this and mailed it to Patty. She should be getting it within the next week or so. And then what we do is, the one I sent her is not connected, so she'll have to put it together and Kitchener stitch it. But when I get hers, I will loop it through here, and then I will Kitchener it, and then they'll be linked. And so this should make a nice warm cowl. We decided to go ahead and do ours in acrylic yarn. It is Christmas time. It's a kind of expensive time of the year for a lot of people, putting money out, trying to make gifts, that kind of thing. I was okay with doing it acrylic. I don't mind that at all. So my part is finished, and this one, and my part was called the cocoon stitch. It was an interesting pattern to work on. I'm really glad that I participated in the Pen Pal Knit Along. It's been a lot of fun. Patty and I have been writing letters to each other, as pen pals probably should, and that's been really interesting, and I've enjoyed it quite a bit. So you didn't think I was going to let this Santa history thing just drop there, right? No, we're going to go down the rabbit hole with this Santa history. So, you know, I mentioned Sinterklaas. That was from the Netherlands. Well, our Santa Claus, of course, wasn't invented in America. There were versions of Santa Claus all over the world. For instance, the Tomte in the Scandinavian countries. They were supposed to be small gnomish people who kept watch over family farms and brought gifts to children. In Germany and Austria, there was Belsnickel, who accompanied the Santa figure, usually depicted as a mountain man figure with fur covering his body and occasionally wearing a mask. Belsnickel usually warned children to be good. Père Noël in France resembled Santa Claus, but he rode a donkey instead of using reindeer. In Italy, there is Befana, a witch-like figure who is variously described as a kind woman who gave food to the three wise men, or riding a broomstick when she climbs down chimneys to leave gifts for children. The Alpine countries have their Santa Claus too, but he is accompanied by a terrifying, bloodthirsty monster called the Krampus, who hands out punishment to bad children. So, lots of different Santa Claus versions, but where did they all come from? And you may have heard the theory of where Santas around the world actually originated. As we all know, there were shamans and witches before the more recent religions took hold of the world. Man's earliest effort at understanding and communing with the mystery of life was through the example and guidance of a shaman or medicine man or woman. These people had various jobs. They were the spiritual guide and healer for the clan, showing them how to stay in harmony with nature. They were also the earliest scientist, judge, timekeeper, and historians. Shamans taught the ritual dances of the hunt, of war, of reproduction, birth, life, and death. The shamans often dressed with animal hides, using masks and other ritual objects such as herbs, sticks, and brooms. In pre-religious times, there would have been a shaman for each clan, all over the populated earth. And when religion arrived, it clashed with these shamans, because the shamans didn't have a concept of right and wrong, evil versus good. Their thinking was more oriented with nature and the concept of give and take. And the church wouldn't have tolerated the power or beliefs of the shamans, so they needed to go away. And we all remember the witch trials that happened. At the same time, we all know how difficult it can be to let go of our belief systems, so it is possible that these shamans morphed into our modern-day Santa Claus. This podcast is so chopped up, I feel like I'm participating in the Christmas vlogs going on right now. And there are a lot of them, and I have been enjoying them. I don't think my life would be interesting enough to vlog every day. And here comes one of our cats. Hey, Felix. Okay, move along, bud. I've been watching Liz at Just One N. She's doing a Christmas vlog. I've been watching Barb at Flame and Fiver, and Mars at Hey Brown Berry, and Sarah at Saltbox Knits. So in the last episode, I also showed some other things I was working on. It was, and I finished them for a friend. It was a baby blanket. The pattern was a diagonal stripe baby blanket. It's a free pattern on Ravelry. I also finished the 7-hour toddler's girl sweater by Suzette Williams. It's another free pattern on Ravelry. And I also added a Sweet and Simple hat by Evelyn Young, another free pattern on Ravelry. I I love knitting for little babies. They're so cute. Felix just won't get out of the frame here. I listened to a really nice book lately I enjoyed quite a bit. The podcast, The Crafty Toads, recommended it. It was The Chaperone by Laura Moriarty. And I was also tagged by Liz at Just One N and by Sarah at Saltbox Knits to do the Knit Life survey. Truthfully, I don't think, most of the questions are good questions, but my answers are kind of boring. So I'm not going to answer them all. I'm going to answer a few of them. What was your first knitting project? A hat I knit for my boyfriend when I was in college. It turned out horribly and put me off knitting for quite a while. Largest project I've ever knit would have to be a cardigan for myself that I will show on a future podcast. Favorite kind of project to make? Most of the time, whatever I'm working on. I love to knit socks. Anybody who's been watching this knows that. I love to knit things for my grandkids. Favorite type of fiber to work with? I don't care. I gravitate toward indie dyed fingering yarn, but that's expensive. It's an expensive little habit to try to keep up. You're probably hearing Chelsea click, click, clicking in the kitchen right now. I'm in the dining room at the moment. Are you a self-proclaimed yarn snob? No, I will knit with whatever seems appropriate. What do you like to watch or listen to while you knit? If it's a simple thing, I'll knit while I watch TV. When I'm down in my knitting room, I like to listen to knitting podcasts or a book on tape on my Alexa. When I'm upstairs with Kim, I will knit in the living room and watch TV. And I usually save a simpler project for that. Do I prefer wood or metal needles? I do not like metal needles. They're too slick. No. I prefer the wood ones. Do I have any other hobbies? I like to read. I love to cook. I love to go hiking. I like to get outside. My favorite snack, anything chocolate. My favorite color, anything in the red spectrum. Red, maroon, pink, anything like that. Orange is probably my least favorite color. And then they say coffee or tea. Both. And I would like to tag Linda at Joey Scarf Podcast and Wendy at the Baba Yaya Podcast. And I will send you those questions. I consider myself really fortunate. Kim loves Christmas as much as I do. He loves putting up Christmas lights outside, and he loves helping me decorate inside the house. Here we are in the living room. This is my knitting chair at night. Nice fire. It's a very comfy living room. I keep some decorations over the kitchen sink and the windowsill here. I used to have a little collection of teddy bears. I don't really collect them anymore, but I like the ones I have. And some more decorations that are on a shelf above the kitchen sink. And some snowman lights that it seems like we've had for quite a while now. They're really cute. When I was researching the history of Santa Claus, I was using this book quite a bit. I've had this book for quite a long time, and it's an interesting read. But I also did some research just on the internet, And wow, there's a lot of interesting stuff about Christmas. And I was researching how Christmas trees got started. There's an alternate story to that of Adam and Eve and the tree of life, and I thought this was really fascinating. It's the story of the tree of fire, where the snake is actually a representation of a lightning bolt from the sky. In this version, a lightning bolt has set a tree on fire, and a woman is the first person brave enough to take a burning branch from the tree and bring it to her clan, thus changing history forever with the gift of fire or knowledge. And now the people can keep warm and cook their food. So this could have been one of the causes for tree worship, which was practiced by pre-religious people, and oaks were usually the tree of choice until those trees were started to be cut down by the new religion that was taking over. The saying was, cut down an oak and a pine is born, and so pine trees replaced the oaks as easier to manage, and they were more common in Germany. Bringing one into the house and placing lights or fire on it may be a reminder of the origin of fire. The first documented use of a tree at Christmas and New Year celebrations is argued between two cities in Latvia. Both trees were erected in the town square, were danced around, and then set on fire. There's another story that says Saint Boniface, who was a priest in England, he left England and traveled to Germany to preach to the pagan tribes. He's said to have come across a group of pagans who were about to sacrifice a young boy while worshiping an oak tree. In anger and to stop the sacrifice, St. Boniface is said to have cut down the oak tree, and to his amazement, a young fir tree sprang up from the roots of the oak tree. St. Boniface took this as a sign of the Christian faith, and his followers decorated the tree with candles so that he could preach to the pagans at night. There's another way it could have happened. And just more interesting things, I'd never heard of the Christmas spider. All these versions involve a poor family who can't afford to decorate their Christmas tree. When they go to sleep, a spider covers the tree in cobwebs. On Christmas morning, the cobwebs are magically turned into silver and gold strands. In Germany, Poland, and the Ukraine, it's good luck to find a spider or a spider's web on your Christmas tree. And spider's web Christmas tree decorations are popular there. I thought that was very cool. Also, the ancient Egyptians worshipped their god Ra, who had the head of a hawk and wore the sun as a blazing disc in his crown. At the solstice, when Ra began to recover his strength, and as the days grew longer, the Egyptians filled their homes with green palm rushes, which symbolized the triumph of life over death. Our Christmas traditions come from a long line of history, and I think it's really interesting to investigate all that and be reminded of why we're doing what we do. Of course, everything changes for modern times. I don't bring my tree in because I worship trees, but I think it's really interesting to know where things began, and it helps to kind of look back on that. And I didn't know this either. Did you know that Barnum's animal cracker boxes had that string attached in order to hang them on a Christmas tree? I also wanted to talk about probably what is my favorite childhood Christmas memory. It happened when I was around 5 years old, and here is a photo of me and all my siblings. I'm in the back on the left with the dark hair behind the chair. And here's another picture of me at 5 years old with my next older sister. I'm the one holding on to our dog, Rusty. My dad liked to tell the story that we 4 girls all learned to walk holding on to Rusty. But my favorite memory has to do with going to my great aunt's house. My dad's mother died when he was only 12, so I never knew that grandmother at all. My mother's mother lived 2 states away and was not fond of her grandchildren on this side at all, so we never saw her and we didn't really care to. But my father's aunt, his mother's sister, was still alive. She lived in the next town over. She and her husband lived in a farmhouse out in the country. It was a 2-story farmhouse. We called her Aunt Tootsie, and we called her husband Uncle Bill. They were wonderful. Uncle Bill was blind. Aunt Tootsie wore her long hair in braids coiled on top of her head. I do remember that. They were still using an outhouse at the time. They did not have indoor plumbing. She cooked on a big wood old stove. And I remember her making pies. I remember her kitchen being huge, and we would all go in there and sit down. And she made ribbon candy at Christmas time. I loved going to her house. And what I really remember is walking into her living room. She had a very small living room. It was very cozy. It had some overstuffed furniture in it. It was very dark. And she had this gorgeous lit Christmas tree that she had decorated. And she had a handmade village she had made underneath it. I was fascinated with that. Aunt Tootsie's house always felt very loving and very safe to me, which is something I really desired. My upbringing, my childhood, was very often fear-filled, and so could be very unpleasant at times. So it was really nice to have a really safe place where I felt very loved. So it's snowing out. I thought I would take advantage and wrap up this podcast. Well, that was kind of a bittersweet memory, as my friend Carol would say. I have another memory from at least a winter, and it's a knitting related memory. My mother used to knit just a little bit. She knitted mostly dishcloths and things like that. But when we were young, she would knit these little squares about 2 inches, and she'd put a loop on them. And some of you have probably heard of this before. I'm sure she didn't invent it, but she called them nose warmers. Yeah, it was a little square we were supposed to wear across our nose and loop around our ears. And she thought we were going to wear these to school. It's pretty funny. Anyway, the reason I'm sharing some memories with you is I thought it would be great if you would share some with me in the YouTube comments or on my Ravelry page. I'll have a thread. And I thought if you could share any kind of holiday memory or winter memory, anything you felt like sharing, I'd be honored to read it. It could be happy, bittersweet, it can be funny, it could even be sad. That's okay. And I will randomly choose 2 winners to give away the pattern of Wendy Goeckner's Totally Tubular Hat, which I have recently knit. And today is an appropriate day to wear it. So this is the one I made. Very thick, very nice hat. And it's reversible, which is really, really cool. Now the color work on this, I added. That's my own addition. So that does not come with the pattern, but you could easily add your own color work. Isn't that nice? It's a really, really warm hat. You can also see this hat. Linda on Joey's scarf knit this hat, and Deborah on Meanwhile at the Castle also knit this hat. So you can check their hats out. They both look really nice. They did like a plain yarn on one side and then a multicolored yarn on the other, and they just turned out really well. One thing I will tell you, and if Adrian is watching this, still watching my podcast, he will laugh his head off at this. Check your gauge. Look here's the first one I knit. Yeah. That didn't work, did it? Didn't work at all. So, check your gauge, people. And that has convinced me that I need to do that more often. I'm also linking The YouTube video I used to check my gauge in the notes, so you can look at that. But it's a great hat pattern. I highly recommend it, and I'm going to give away 2 of them on my next podcast. Also, I showed you the pom-pom maker that I bought. I couldn't figure out how to use that on my own, so I will link a YouTube video to that shows you exactly how that thing works too. And since we're talking about links to all the patterns and the show notes and everything are going to be, as usual, in the YouTube comments or below my YouTube video, and then also in the Ravelry group. And if you like this video, it'd be great if you'd give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already subscribed and you feel like it, that would be super too. Otherwise, I'm just glad you're here. And speaking of Meanwhile at the Castle, they had a little giveaway, and I won. And I love what I won. Deborah sent me this cute little kit to make gnome ornaments for the Christmas tree. Super cute. She said everything to make like 6 gnomes. I thought that was so cute. And her instructional video, I will also link to that in the show notes. And it worked out so well. What I really loved was seeing her 10-year-old daughter, Nadia, making these alongside of her. And it made me feel like, well, if a 10-year-old can do this, I probably can too. So I hung in there. And it went really well, and I love how they turned out. I think they look really pretty on our Christmas tree, and I will make more of those. And thank you very much, Emily and Deborah. It was really sweet. It came packaged so lovely. I couldn't believe it. I almost wanted to just save it until Christmas, but I did want to get those gnomes made, and I'm glad I opened it early. So just a couple more things I've been working on. I started a pair of Christmas socks for, I'm going to enter these in the, let's see, the Strings and More podcast is doing a Christmas sock knit along. There you can see it better. I am using the Inline for Pumpkin Spice Latte sock pattern again because I like it so much. This yarn is the Cascade Yarns Heritage Paints Cherry Berry color. Oh, it's so pretty, isn't it? And I dyed the green myself with a sparkle mini I bought from Cappy at the Yarn and I. And I think it's going to be a gorgeous little pair of Christmas socks. I'm also working on the Project Peace shawl by Christina Campbell. I will insert a picture of that. I haven't gotten very far. The yarn is Redrum by Lolo Did It. I think it's going to be very pretty. My daughter has been doing a meditation for peace for a few months now. You don't have to be where she's at. We just kind of do it at home in private. Usually it's on Wednesday nights. I think she's going to switch it to Tuesdays, but that's been really enjoyable for me. It gives me an excuse to meditate and think about peace in the world. And if you're interested in joining that, hit me up with a private message and I'll show you where her group is, because we leave comments about how our meditation went and how we enjoyed it, or whether it was a struggle to concentrate or just things like that. So that's been really nice. I also wanted to mention that another thing I like to do, you know, I'm doing the keepsake boxes for my grandchildren and putting a pair of adult socks in them when they reach a year old. I also, a few years ago, started Christmas ornament boxes for my grandchildren. So, you know, those nice little separated boxes, cases where either beer or wine comes in. Well, you can get those fairly easily. But anyway, I take those and I buy Christmas ornaments. Usually when they're on sale after Christmas, you can get some very pretty ornaments. And I've been getting a collection going for each of my grandchildren, because I think it would be nice if they had some nice ornaments when they become adults and perhaps want to have their own tree. This year, I think I might knit some ornaments for their box. I think that'd be fun. So I might do that. So I know this has been quite a long podcast for me. If you've hung in there with me, congratulations. I know I've gone through a lot of info in this one, and I really appreciate you watching. The off the porch segment this time is from Thanksgiving, when my daughter and son-in-law and my grandson Russell were here. There was a cute little baby deer that came right up to the front porch, and we tried to get Russell to throw it some pieces of bread, but he wasn't into sharing it. He was more into eating it on his own, but he did enjoy watching the deer. So happy holidays from here in Montana. I hope you spend some nice time with your family. I understand that there may be some tension over the holidays, and I hope everybody just takes a deep breath and tells themselves sometimes this is just how it goes and everything will pass. So happy holidays from Montana, and see you in a month or so. Thanks for watching. Bye.
Oh, do you want to use that? It's for the deer, Russell. Throw some to the deer.
Yeah.
Russell, will you share with the deer? Throw it.
Is that a deer, Russell?